Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to Think and Grow Rich Live. My name is Dr. Peter A. James, and we are excited to have you with us early this Saturday morning, as we are excited to have you with us every Saturday morning as we dive into Napoleon Hill's phenomenal text, Think and Grow Rich. Today is no different. We have some interesting and deep dialogue that we're going to dive into his text, none other, of course, than chapter 10 of Napoleon Hill's book, The Mystery of Sex Transmutation. So I'm preparing you all now as you get ready to dive on in. Yes, because we're getting ready to talk about sex and how it ties into Think and Grow Rich. Of course, I'm not here by myself, as always. I have the lovely angels. We're missing an angel today, so shout out to Galen Bingham, wherever you are in the world. Galen, hope you're doing well. Hope you are safe. For those of you who are with us, you know our other distinguished angel, none other than the master wealth builder, Ann McNeil. Good morning to you. How are you doing, my dear?
Peter. Listen, if I were any better, I would be you and all of our listeners. And we want to thank them because we are talking about some of the principles are exciting, but I think we would all agree that this is probably one of the most exciting titles. And then there's a pin to drop. So I'm excited to be here, Peter, and let's go ahead and get this party started.
Absolutely. So, of course, let's just be honest. Let's just go ahead and bring the elephant out right into the room, sex. And so when we say that word sex, we don't attribute it to business, career, life in general, do we? We instead think about it from a purely physical perspective. But you and I both know, Anne, there are so many layers to that word, and then how we can channel it, for lack of a better word, towards opportunities, towards how we operate on a day-to-day basis, to even how we think, for that matter. Would you not agree?
Well, not only do I agree, I would like to just set it up as we bring on our special guest to just share with our listeners that Napoleon Hill tells us that this is the 10th step toward riches. And he starts it off by telling us, Peter, that the meaning of the word transmute, because it's not just sex, it's the transmutation of the energy, the sex energy, if you will, and changing it or transferring it from one element, form of energy, because that's all we all have is energy, into another form. And so the state of mind that's required to practice, how do you transfer one form of energy into another form of energy when it comes to speaking about, the sexual energy, because we know that this energy was created for basically three things, right? One, for perpetuation of mankind. And so we're familiar with that. And then the other one is the maintenance of health. But then there's a third that really transfers and transforms mediocrity, if you will, into genius. And when you think of many of the people that we've heard about that are geniuses, they have tapped into this, I want to call it the subconscious mind ability to transfer that energy. It's so powerful, so powerful. And so we're going to discuss that today.
And it's interesting how we do that. So let's dive on in. Let me go ahead and lay the red carpet out for our distinguished guest this week there, Ann McNeil. So Christine McCarron has been involved in real estate from on many levels for over 20 years, investing in her own projects, fulfilling her dreams. Her love of architecture and the challenges of restoration have prompted her to get involved in numerous rehab projects. I might need to bring her up for some of my rehab projects there, Ann, of her own. And she enjoys the vicarious pleasures of working with home buyers involved in the very similar projects. Of course, she is no stranger to us on Saturday mornings here at Think and Grow Rich Live. She really embodies the principles of Napoleon Hill, these 13 principles, which we'll talk about in just a little bit as well. She's in the New England area, if I'm not mistaken. She appreciates the opportunity to work with first-time home buyers, their enthusiasm and delight in the home buying process. She has a Bachelor's of Arts degree from Northeastern University, is a host of a weekly podcast, Get Your Fill. Fill stands for Financial Independence and Long Life. Ooh, we might need to ask her about that one there, Ann. And then she has created several online courses for new buyers at mastermind.com. How does she get that domain? No more waiting. Let's bring out Chris McCarron. Chris, good morning to you. How are you doing today?
Good morning. It's so great to see your bright, shiny faces this morning in person, where I actually get to interact with you instead of just watching you on TV.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Truly appreciate it. And we're always excited to have you here. You're not even a guest anymore. You can just go into the refrigerator and go get a drink yourself.
That was my goal all along, to get to your fridge.
Chris, you're an entrepreneur, you're a realtor, you're a speaker, you're an investor, you got a book. I love that domain name. We got to get into all of that as well. But thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to steal Ann McNeil's first question as well, as she always asks. When were you first introduced into Think and Grow Rich?
Well, yeah, and that's actually a setup, because even though I was introduced to the book, I don't even know how long ago, I read it and it was just like, I might as well have been reading like a Stephen King book. I read it and I was like, oh, that's nice. Put it away. And it wasn't until I was introduced to Ann McNeil and her philosophy and all of her teachings and coaching and, all her wonderful offerings that I rediscovered the book and read it in a completely different way. Right. And I really allowed it. And just allowed it to seep into me and to start to work on my subconscious mind, which is not what we're talking about today, but it's definitely a big part of Think and Grow Rich and success, I think.
And then you met Ann McNeil.
Yep. And my whole world opened up. I mean, really, I can't even tell you. She can tell you how much I've changed since I've known her, but I don't know if she was willing to take credit for it.
And what a segue right now there. Ann McNeil, your initial question, or maybe your comment about Chris right off the top.
Listen, the speed of the leader is the speed of the group. And I tell Chris all the time, I am so very proud of her and her professional growth, but also personal growth and development as relates to this book. And I have a couple of the copies behind me, because we started out with one version copyrighted many years ago. And now, when you think about the principles are all the same. And Chris just made a comment about the subconscious mind, and they're all connected to each of our desire. What is it that you truly desire? And every time I come on, I have to keep saying that. And I've watched Chris have a desire to educate women, in particular, single women, more specifically in terms of the ability to purchase, rehab, real estate, no matter what level that they're at. And I've watched her use this principle and this philosophy from this book, Think and Grow Rich, in her own life and share it with others. And it has just been a phenomenal opportunity for growth for all of us to experience her growth, if you will. So those are my thoughts about Chris, and I cannot say enough about her. And as we talk about this particular principle, if you will, as we get into it, I've also watched that side of her life. Also, I've watched her transform that energy, if you will, into great success. So those are my Chris McCarron thoughts without going too deep about our boyfriend, you know.
Good stuff. Good stuff
Yeah.
there. And so yeah, we're definitely diving on into the 10th principle of Think and Grow Rich. But before we do there, Ann, I want to acknowledge our listeners, our watchers this morning. I see Jason Murray. Good morning to you, Jason, Renette, Colette, Yolanda. Good to see you. We have folks on Facebook. I see Ada. Good morning. Doretha, as always, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for your questions and diving on in. And before we dive into the mystery of sex transmutation, I would hope that you would do us a favor of maybe giving us an overview of this book as you see it. Maybe even give us a little bit of a snippet of why it's important to you.
Whoa, to me, ooh.
Yeah, that was deep right there. I went deep. I went deep. I caught you off guard on purpose. Why Think and Grow Rich a little bit, and these principles are so important to you, how they have touched your life.
Well, I think, again, I go back to the first principle when Napoleon Hill talks about your desire, right? I tell people often, my mom was a holiness minister, and so I was raised in that other book. But I didn't quite understand how to live that book and the principles from that book, right? But it was not until I began to read this book over and over and over again every single year, then Peter, Chris, and everybody who's listening, the connecting links and pieces started to come clearer and clearer and clearer to me. And I began to understand that my faith needed to be connected to my desire. My affirmations and the scriptures and everything that I was reading and reciting needed to be connected to what he calls autosuggestion and the repetition of those. And that was connected to my faith and my desire. Then I began to realize that in my profession, I needed to have what he calls, you know, we call it these degrees and this education and all of that. He calls it specialized knowledge, because I was general in my knowledge and in my profession. But it was not until I began to niche to be rich in specializing as a contractor and specifically in a particular trade and in a particular industry that I began to understand, how do these principles really work? But I had to learn that over the years, and then to go from my specialized knowledge to how do I use my imagination in the use of my specialized knowledge automatically, and if you will, reciting every day, whether it's a self-confidence formula or my affirmation that connects to my desire and connects to my faith. So as I walk through each of those, Peter and Chris, for my own life, right, I needed to have organized plans.
Yeah.
But what good are the organized plans without making a decision, right, to act on those plans? I love listening to the scroll, and the one we're listening to now is talking about acting now. But it's acting on a decision to act on the plans that connect to my desire. And once I have those plans and the decision, I need to persist until I succeed with a spirit of excellence. And even in that persistence, I call it the insurance. You know, we have home insurance, we have health insurance, we have life insurance, we have all of these different types of insurance. But persistence, wow, persistence, I call it business insurance. Because if you're willing to persist until you succeed with a spirit of excellence, that is the insurance that you need to overcome all failure, lack of money, lack of any kind of lack. Your persistence towards your desired goal will help you with that. But if you persist with the power of the mastermind to vet your plans and hold you accountable, how can you not hit a goal you can see? So mastermind principles, then we go into what we just talked about, about the subconscious mind. And right now we're talking about having an opportunity to transmute this sexual energy toward the desired goal, mixing all of these together. And then we begin to talk about the brain. Then the sixth sense. I don't know what else we need when we talk about utilizing our own desire, if you will. If you may call it a desire, it can be financial, it can be material, it can be whatever it is you desire. So for me, when you ask me that question, Peter, it started for me 1979, December 31st, 9 p.m. when I realized that I only wanted $1,000 saved a year. But I could not do that without the mindset for success with without these principles. So now here we are many years later. My desire now, Peter, is $1,000 passive a day and learning how to do that using these principles. So with those thoughts, let's go to the video, which we're going to share with everybody. And if you've heard it before, I don't think that any of us can tire hearing it, because this video is the 13 principles espoused by Napoleon Hill for success. But you must have your own desire, not your mom's desire, not your father's desire, not the company's desire, but what is it that you desire that these 13 principles can help you to achieve? So listen up.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the Mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. that if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right. You heard it for yourself. And the question for all of us to discuss today and to share is, how do you transfer your sexual energy into another form of energy? And so starting that conversation off today for us, Peter, is none other than our special guest. And I would like to have both of you come back on and let's kind of go around. Oh, I also want to make sure that all these guests that we have in the chat that you mentioned, if you have any questions and you are in the chat, please put your questions in the chat, and we will, between the three of us, we'll work on. And Chris is smiling and say, yes, don't give them all to me.
I'm not techie. I'm no techie.
No. I want to make sure that we bring our virtual guests into the podcast conversation. So Yolanda, Colette, Renette, Jason, Tashana, all of you, Aida, Doretha, all of you, and everybody else that's live. Just put your questions and comments in the chat, and we will look forward to bringing them into the conversation. Actually, Renette already has a question. She said, from Anne, how do you train? Okay, she's reciting what I said. And again, the question is for each of you listening, how do you transmute? This is such a serious conversation. And Chris, would I like to start with you? And Peter already usurped me by asking my favorite question, which was your introduction to the book. But I'd like to, let's talk about your introduction to this principle. And if you can share with us a moment or point in time when you went, oh, wow, I got it. This particular principle, because I know you do the clarity work, and I know you've been in this book for years and years and years. But this particular principle, can you share how do you use it? How do you actually give us an example? I know a couple, but this is your.
Well, to me, when you actually read the chapter, I mean, it's so easy. You think sex transmutation. What does that mean? We're just supposed to be celibate, and we're going to use all that energy and that frustration to like do something else. But it's not like that at all.
No.
It's about passion, and it's about charisma, and it's about that sex appeal. And when you meet somebody and you're just drawn to them because they just have this attractive quality about them. That's the way. When you actually read the chapter, when you hear how he's describing it, you're thinking it's true. You meet someone and they come up and they shake hands with you, and they're just so like just electrifying, and you think, wow, this person is so amazing. It doesn't mean you want to like jump in bed with them. It means that they've got that that passion and that energy. And I feel like when you start to direct that passion toward your business or your life or something that you're really passionate about, something that you're really interested in, that's where you start to draw in the factors and the elements and the people that you need in order to make that a success, right? Does that sort of make sense? Is that how you all read it and understand it as you actually read the chapter?
Yes, you hit on a couple of things, and I got to see this big smile on Peter's face, but two things: that eye contact and that handshake.
Yeah.
That is an excellent example of the transference of the sexual energy. And many salespeople have that.
The good
Notice.
ones. The good ones.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. No, the good. Oh gosh, thank you. And actually, one of the number one insurance companies in the world in his day, um, Clement Stone, his company is now called AIG.
Mm.
He tapped into this and hired Napoleon Hill until the day Napoleon Hill died, and taught his thousands of insurance agents this principle. And they were required to read this book, and their sales went through the roof. I mean, we can go into that conversation about nonverbal communication and all of that, but this particular principle and the transference of that energy, it's happened to many of us. We've bought, pots and knives and vitamins, and vitamins at the expo or the booth or the trade show, whatever, from people that had that sexual energy transference. Come on, somebody. And the guys, the women, they're all dolled up, and you're thinking, listen, lady, I'm buying whatever you're selling.
Well, even in there's some statistics or some studies that have been done for like a waitress, or waiter, probably, if they touch the shoulder or if they have physical contact with their clients, with the people, the diners, the difference in tips it's more than 50% more tips when they have that physical contact with a person. So it's just all about like attraction.
I will dive into the text really quick, and then I'll bounce right back out to the physical traction there, Chris. Let me read this on page 189 of the text. For those of you, again, this is your first foray into sex transmutation. Napoleon Hill says sexual transmutation, which is involved in the third constructive potentiality, is simple. I just lost it real quick. It's simple and easily explained. It means the switching of one's mind or dominating mental focus from thoughts of a merely physical expression to thoughts of another nature. It does not mean, and this is as Chris said, it does not mean in any sense celibacy or repression of natural instincts. What it does mean is approaching sex and engaging in sexual conduct from a completely positive, completely constructive, balanced, and appropriate state of awareness. He goes on to say, now this is the important part here, part that I really love. People who are driven by this desire in a positive, constructive sense can channel it to develop keenness of imagination, keenness of courage, keenness of willpower, keenness of persistence, and creative ability that are all but unknown at many other times, right? So on the surface, you hear sex and your minds go in one specific area, right? Sex sells. But what Napoleon Hill is really saying is, how can now we channel our own sexual energy towards imagination, towards courage, towards willpower, towards persistence and creative ability. And as we bring back everyone into the discussion here, when I was in sales years ago, you're right, it's interesting. The leaders used to hire people for their overtly sexual prowess, their beauty, the stuff that you could see. And while that's not exactly what Napoleon Hill is talking about, he is saying, hey, how do they channel all of this into what I just mentioned there, that imagination, the courage, the willpower, the persistence, and the creative ability. So it's very insightful, very unique, and there's not many texts that talk about that. And Neil, it's such a great conversation overall. And if we can channel that first with that handshake, first with that touch, you'd be surprised at what it could lead to every day.
Well, I'd like to know, how do you use it, Chris, intentionally?
How do you channel it, right?
Yeah, I guess I probably don't consciously do it, right? But when you get excited about something and you've got, like, I've got a new project going on, and when I talk about it, I can hear that my voice gets faster and more elated and more, I get more fired up about it, and people, like, they'll turn their head, they want to listen, they get drawn in. And again, I'm not like thinking, okay, I'm going to channel my sexual energy to you, but because I'm excited and passionate about this project, it just naturally translates into that, that quality that people are drawn to,
Money.
which
it translates into sales, translates into money. I want to go back to Dr. Peter James when he says, when I used to be Peter, you're still in sales. Chris, you're selling.
Exactly. Any entrepreneur is in sales. And, I would say anybody who does anything is if you want to be good at it, you've got to, even if you're just selling your colleagues on your abilities, right?
How about your children on stay in school? How about yourself on your goal and your desire? And so this to me is the transference of the energy. And we have a lot of people in the chat chatting up, but I want to just remind, listen, we have a special person in the chat, and I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge him. Of course, Galen Bingham says, advertisers do that all the time. Sex sells.
Yeah.
They channel sex into desire for their product, and it's absolutely true. In preparation for the podcast today, I was doing some research, and I came up with the silver method about mind. I'm not going to call it mind control. You know what it is? It is you controlling your own mind, but not being controlled by others, right? And the subconscious mind tapping into this principle, going back to Galen's point, you can choose and strategically plan and develop a plan to control your own. It's called an affirmation.
Right. We know that very well.
So, Chris, coming back to you, can you give us a business example dealing with your real estate and the new image that your coach has been sharing with you in terms of the impact that has? And I think that that's all a part of you learning how to transfer this energy, because we lead with our eyes, and as we see things, right? People say, why do you always wear red? I love the energy. But again, that is transference of one energy to another. I put on a brown or black, I'm sad, I feel sad, and I emanate that. So can you give us maybe an example? I can think of one. I'll share one with everybody. Chris, I don't know if you can pull this up, but Chris has a new JPEG cover that she uses. And this week alone, we were in a meeting, our clarity meeting, actually, and she had to step off camera, and this photo came up of her. And you could feel the energy of everybody looking at it. And I know she didn't realize it. And actually, I think it was Shania Fair. She wanted to stay on this subject, and she was complimenting Chris about this new look. So, Chris, can you share with us, that to me is a form of transference of energy from one form to another. Can you share with us, that experience?
The experience of sort of changing my image, you mean?
Yes, of course, because I think that that's an example. We can talk to the audience about what does it look like when we talk about this principle. We can sit here and say, oh, the principle, connects to the 10 stimuli. What are they? The desire for sex expression, right? But it's also love. It's also a burning desire for power, financial gain, money, whatever it is you choose. Music does it for us. You talked earlier about the friendship between individuals, when you're communicating with them, right? The Mastermind Alliance, that's what we were doing when the conversation turned to your new image, your new brand. These are some of the stimuli. We're not going to get into the narcotics and alcohol, stuff like that. But these are some of the stimuli that oftentimes we don't realize that we're actually transferring our energy from one form to another. So, if you can just share, why did you choose to do that? What motivated you to change your image?
Well, it's interesting, Anne, because another thing as you read this chapter that does come up is self-confidence. right? There's just a lot in this chapter, and even like that kind of charisma, you know, if you're not confident, you're not going to be able to exude that confidence. You're not going to be able to exude that passion and that sexual energy. So as my self-confidence has grown, and as I have started taking on new roles and new businesses and new all this stuff, I looked at my other pictures and I thought, "Ugh," they're just so droopy, and they're just so, they just didn't have any of that kind of energy. And luckily, when I went to have this photo shoot done, the people there were just so good at, just allowing you to kind of, I don't know exactly how to say it, but just to bring out that element of you. And we were having fun, and we were, it was just very flirty and fun and playful. And I think that came across in those photos. And again, that's part of what, I want people to understand and feel as they talk to me and work with me. They're going to say, "Oh, she's fun. She's cool. She's got, she knows what she's talking about." Right. And that all comes down to being able to allow people to see that side of you, right? That side where you're using your creative imagination and you're using your, I don't want to say sex appeal, but that's, that passion that allows that passion to come through.
Peter. She is trying to avoid the use of the words transference of her sexual energy into a new image to draw to her bottom line. That's the bottom line.
And here's the thing about it. You don't have to be dressing sexy or doing the overt sexy stuff to be applying this. I love what Chris has said by the self-confidence. And so my question to you there, Chris, is you mentioned that how to shift that how to shift that towards the self-confidence in your day-to-day activities. What does that look like? What might that look like? And how have you been able, let me ask that question a different way. How have you been able to improve your self-confidence as a result of this conversation a little bit? What are some strategies you've been able to use? I'm sure that's going to benefit someone in the audience a little bit.
It's 100%, influencing, allowing my subconscious mind to be influenced by my own words and by what I'm listening to, what I'm intentionally taking in. So it's, listening to certain things in the morning, listening to different, well, like right now we're listening to, as Anne alluded to the Scrolls, Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman in the World. And we listen to, I listen to a lot of just different kinds of reading Think and Grow Rich every single evening, right? Even when I'm not in a mastermind or in some kind of a group that's reading it and we're reading it together, I always read at least 2 pages every single night. So that gets you through the book twice a year with really very small amount of effort. But a big thing for me is my affirmations. Every single morning, I say the self-confidence formula. I have my affirmations that I say. And I'm adding, it's interesting because I used to have like one little affirmation, but now I have like 4. And I just keep adding to them and say, oh, I need one for this. And it keeps you, even if you didn't listen, even if it didn't do anything for you in the positive side, it keeps you from becoming negative, right? So if I'm focused on, like saying I do a wonderful business in a wonderful way, I give excellent service for excellent pay, then I'm not saying, oh, I don't have enough money and I don't, right? It's just even if it's the absence of negativity, it's still a really positive influence on you.
Yeah, I love that. I love the affirmations, the use of affirmations, which I'm such a big fan of as well. They're channeling now those words into my persona.
Yeah.
Right. And I love it also how you said earlier, we're always selling. We're selling ourselves. We're, the other day, I more and more of these face-to-face in-person presentations are occurring again. And you're absolutely right. I think Anne who mentioned it, or maybe you, Chris, touching someone during a presentation, you never know how that might impact them. It allows you to be connected, allows them to feel more connected to you as well. So this is a very interesting conversation, how we can definitely continue to channel this. I wonder if our audience has got questions, Aaron McNeil.
Yeah, I want to just mention something that Renette said. She said, I know this topic reminds me of the book Five Love Languages
Mm-hmm.
by Gary Chapman. And it says that there are five, okay, here we go.
5 ways
It
that.
says, yeah, ways that people express and receive love. And then I also want to go down to something that Tashana said, and she talks about, no, I think it's Galen. Why avoid the sex appeal? Now, coming back to you, Chris, and I still want to suggest to all of us the power in recognizing how do you each. This is so powerful because um, the expression comes from a stimuli. How do you step up the vibrations? And this is what advertisers have done an excellent job in doing. And that's what Galen talked, he mentioned. But just stop and think about how we are all programmed. This connects to the subconscious mind principle. And if we get that, we really can begin to better understand how do you use your own mind to control your own energy and your thoughts. And whether you are single or married, whether you are whatever it is, it will boil down to you're having a desire to achieve something. So I'm going to go back to Chris' desire. Chris
Mm-hmm.
has a desire to educate women in the area of real estate investing. So everything that she's doing is connected to that desire. So the stimuli and her affirmations and her services that she provides in her learning, how does she transform and transfer one form of energy into another form of energy, is where the power is. And I believe that for all of us, once we can begin to understand how do you do that, small steps at first, and when you see the benefit of the small step, then you can make a bigger step and then a bigger step. But do understand that these what he calls them mind stimuli. You gotta have something that's going to stimulate you to take that extra step. So Chris, I'm gonna come back to you and ask, what is it that stimulates you and moves you to action every day? I don't know if you maybe want to share an affirmation. You just mentioned one very quickly a few minutes ago. So even if you want to repeat that, because again, I believe that that is how you are choosing to transform that energy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And as I said, every time there's a new goal or there's a new aspect of my business or my life that I want to focus on, I feel like I just want to be really intentional and write down some type of little affirmation just to remind myself of where my focus is. I almost feel like, as you're talking about transmuting energy, I almost feel like it's like a light that you're focusing. Instead of shining a big lantern all over the world, you're just honing it in and making a laser focus that's going to make things so much more clear. So the one that I actually love, Florence Scovel Shinn, she's
Yes.
she has tons of affirmations. So you could read one of her books and just come up with dozens of ideas of things that you could translate into your own. And so I've slightly modified one of hers, which is, I do a wonderful business in a wonderful way, giving excellent service for excellent pay. It's just, it's catchy, it's quick, it's easy to remember. And sometimes I'll say it, the whole drive in, right? Sometimes I'll just say it again and again, just to kind of, because it just becomes like a mantra that allows you to focus on that. And when I say it, I think about it like, I love the way I'm nurturing, because I've started this co-working space as a way to learn more about commercial real estate and ways to transform different, one thing into something else. So I'm that's actually transforming buildings is one of the things that I do as a real estate agent, as an investor. So I've transformed this building into a co-working space. And I just think about like how I'm creating this nurturing environment for people and how I'm giving them a space where they love to come and they feel good and they love to connect with each other. And, you know, so as I'm thinking like excellent service and doing excellent business, you know, wonderful business, it brings thoughts into my mind that are all positive. And it's almost a way of visualizing what I'm doing for these clients that's allowing me to be successful.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Peter, I'm not sure if you have a comment regarding what she said. If not, I'd like to.
Yeah, please jump on in there too.
Yeah, I want to go to something you kind of touched on about. Well, see, this is what I know about you, Chris, too. I know that you have a daily routine and a ritual. And one of the things the author says about tapping into the transference of the energy. So we want to make sure that our listeners understand, how do you go from the desire with the transference of the energy? What does that look like? And I'll just use Chris for it as an example. He shares that having quiet time, right? You talk about transference of energy, right? So quiet time, whatever that means for you, in the morning, at night, middle of the day, whatever that means for each of you. For Chris, I know Chris well enough to know that hers is in the morning, right?
Yeah.
But then he talks about the idea that hunches, inspirations, these thoughts come up, and what do you do with them? So to me, this is what the process begins of how you transfer, you transform, you transmute that energy, that thought energy, into the realization of that which you desire. This is the transmutation, sex transmutation. He gives an example of artists, painters, and we see them, we hear about them, but we also know that for the most part, they rely on that sixth sense, if you call it, but they don't just stop there. They actually act on it. One of the examples that Napoleon Hill gives, I always like reading that part, talks about, I think it was Dr. Gates or something like that, and how he uh, was paid, right?
Sit for ideas.
Yes, pay for, I like to call it, and when I journal, I call it sit for ideas. And that's how I came up with my day for myself. So I sit for ideas. I sit daily for ideas. I just take 1 through 10 on the page and I write it, the numbers, and I ask my brain to give me ideas. I really want to make sure that our listeners, Chris and Dr. James, are able to take something from this conversation and actually learn how to transfer one form of energy into another form of energy. You know, because when you step up the vibration of your mind or your brain or your energy, right, to another plane, this is a transference of other energy now. Then what do you do with it once you concentrate? And so, Chris, if you can share with us an example, I think you just did with the co-working space. Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? And by you explaining that, it gives the listeners another idea, another example of how do they transfer their energy from one form to another.
Well, it's interesting, Anne, because what you're, you know, it all ties together basically.
Yes.
Is this idea of following hunches, that you hear something and you think something and you just feel like, I mean, I feel like I receive ideas as much as I come up with them on my own, right? And so I just was approached by someone that they wanted to buy my house that I had literally just finished. I said to someone, all I have to do is paint 2 doors. And then an hour later, the phone rings and someone says, do you want to sell your house? And so I said, all right, well, if I do that, what will I do? And I found this piece of real estate that in a town that I would never have heard of before, except that I had just sold 3 houses in that town. And I just thought, you know, it was an hour from where I lived. I was like, why did I sell 3 houses? You know, it's just like happenstance. One thing just leads to another. And you just think, I'm just following the path that's being laid out for me here. And in the actual ad for this space, which was, I feel, an extremely low price and everything, and it was just like a kind of a no-brainer. And right in the MLS listing, the agent had said, perfect for a co-working space. And I was just like, wow, that's what I want to do. It's just like I tingled, right? You just get this like, oh, this is the idea. This is it, right? And you just pinpoint, okay, this is it. This is the thing. This is what I'm supposed to do next. And I just went with it, right? It was a hunch. It was an inspiration. It was a little, that still small voice that just kind of, whispers in your ear sometime. It's as simple as that. I had absolutely no thought or ambition to start a co-working space. It just, I'm just following the path that's being laid out for me. It feels that way. So
I love this. I love this. Galen said it very, very well, and actually piggybacks on what you just said right there, Chris. Galen says in the chat, this chapter highlights just how much power we have in our mind. We can literally change energies into different forms by merely deciding to do so, right? But then also by putting ourselves in the right place at the right time, by those affirmations, by that positivity. So what I love about this chapter is it doesn't stand alone by itself. It really connects well to the other principles in this text so well. And I think it is a necessary part of the book, but connects so well, and how we can channel this energy into positivity, into the right thinking. There's a question in the chat from Jason there, Anne McNeil. And I'm going to ask this of Anne McNeil and Chris as our time gets short. How can our energy stay focused to challenge us to reach additional goals once we meet one significant goal?
Chris, you want to go first?
Okay, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I feel like that's how we're wired, right? As soon as you achieve a goal, you're not like, oh, that's it. Okay, I'm done now. I'm going to just sit here and cross my arms, right? We're always like, okay, now what's next? What's next? What's next? And so I feel you can use that goal that you've just achieved as almost like a rocket fuel to say, right, I just did that. And it's like, okay, that's history, right? But now what's next? What's next? How can I use that fuel to now come up with a goal? And I think part of that is that you have a goal that's compelling to you, something that's really challenging and fun. And you think, oh man, when I get this thing, okay, sure, I just did that. But now this next thing's really going to be spectacular, right? Keeping that passion, that energy going.
Yeah, I would say dream bigger. Dream bigger. And this is one of the reasons why when you focus on organized planning principle, and Jason, I know you're in the book, so I'm going to challenge you to go back and read that section, because we just finished that as a part of our Black NSA $1 Million Mastermind, and I know you're in that group also, Jason. But start with the end in mind. In other words, you want to have your short-term goals, and this is what we talk about in the retreat, if you will, and the annual meeting. You start with your short-term goals, 6 months or whatever, then a little longer, maybe a year. When I started doing this back in 79, I looked out 20 years. And before I knew anything, I was already in the 15th year. And then I went out 40 years, right? The Chinese 100-year plan. Oftentimes, when we are achieving a goal, going back to your question, if you hit the goal short term and you have not reset it in advance, sometimes we settle. Chris made a very important point when she said, I just finished my house. It sold. And then I said, what else do I want to do? But this is what she did not say. She did not say that my money goal was so much larger than that house. You see, so she actually had a larger goal. The house actually tapped it because she was able to sell it for a lot more than expected. But the longer vision for her was a longer term goal or vision. And I would challenge each and every one of us. Start with the end in mind and then work backwards. So then, Jason, then your question about how can our energy stay focused to challenge us, I would challenge you to say that it's connected to your desire, which you really should have a short-term, long-term, and it doesn't have to be a money goal. It can be to serve or to give. But if you have a vision that's so much larger than your life, you'll never achieve it. So your energy will always be challenged in the accomplishment and the attainment of the steps that will get you toward, I don't want to say eternity, but the next life, if you will. Those are my thoughts, and
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And because I could have, when I sold my house, I could have bought another house for cash and never worked again. But that was like that. I wasn't even on the table. I didn't even consider that because I've done my obituary and I know what I want people to say about me when I'm gone. They didn't say, "Oh, and she lived in obscurity in this little house." Right? That was not on my obituary.
Yeah, that's another subject. And now we're going to go ahead and wrap up and talk about the annual meeting, because all of these that we're sharing and discussing connects to our annual meeting.
Exactly.
We want to encourage all of you that's listening, please register. I say this every single week, 52 weeks in the year. The early bird is ending, and some of you have not registered yet, so we want to encourage you to do that. But on January the 6th and the 7th, there you go, January 6th and 7th, 2023, we will be at the Embassy Suites in Boca Raton, Florida, hosting our annual meeting for your life. It is not a conference. Let me say, this is not a conference. This is a meeting for your life. Think about if you have a job or if you invest in stocks. They have an annual meeting every year of the stockholders and the shareholders. And that annual meeting, they look at their earning projections and they look at how did they do. We want to challenge you to have an annual meeting for your life every January. Join us as you look at your earning projections for your life. Your business is not your life. Your life is not your business. You are your business. So whatever your name is, Jason Murray Inc., Renette Gordon Inc., Galen Bingham Inc., right? Doretha Dennis Inc. Well, she's a new name now. Chris McCarron Inc. Think of your life and the different departments of your life. What are your earnings projections for your life? Chris mentioned obituary. That's a part of our annual meeting. And so if you write your obituary now, then you work it backwards. Join us by registering early. That early bird investment is going to end. And I like to tell people, where else can you go for that investment of only $99? And it has been that price range for almost 20 years. Yes. And so it will increase. Yes, it will increase. And please, let's make sure that it does not increase right before you register, because we don't want it to be a deterrent. We want it to be a motivation for you to act now. Scroll 10. Act now, and not just register yourself, but also bring your family and also your friends. So join us. You can go to internationalmasterminders.com and register now for that. So back to you. Oh, you got to come off mute.
I'm just talking, of course. Let's go around the room really quickly and let us know how, Chris, would start off with you. How can we stay in touch with you and all the great stuff that you're doing? Please let our listeners know what's the best way to stay in touch.
Thanks for asking, Dr. Peter James. I have a new free online course called womencreatingwealth.net, or it's on womencreatingwealth.net, and that will help you if you have any thoughts of becoming a real estate investor. You can take that course. It's free. It's fun. And then I'm on a lot of different platforms as Boston RE Guru. You'll find me at Women Creating Wealth on TikTok, and that's the easiest way. Is just on Facebook, Christine McCarron, or Boston RE Guru.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Ann McNeil, how can we stay in touch with you?
Well, I want to give my aha from Chris comments, and just follow the path. When you're looking at transferring your energy, follow the path and stay on the path. That was so powerful for me, Chris. Thank you so much for sharing that, because again, we can become derailed and off track, if you will, in terms of the energy. My name is Ann McNeil. I am the Master Wealth Builder. And if you would like to build your wealth in your business, you can connect with me by joining our Niche to Be Rich one-day business retreat. You can go to annmcneil.com/coaching to get the details about that. But again, Ann McNeil, Niche to Be Rich. That's it.
Love it. Love it. I love this conversation. And what I love about something Chris said there earlier there, Anne, is that she mentioned that how do you channel this sex energy into confidence? What are some ways? And she called out affirmations and that positivity that she injects into her mind on a regular basis, and then how it exudes in different areas of her life. Even from just taking images, photography of herself, for that matter. For those of you who are listening and watching, I wonder how that can be channeled also moving forward. How can you channel that into be a better salesperson, or just be a better version of yourself moving forward overall? My name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach, helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames. You can find me coming up, though, for sure. And I encourage you to join us, myself and Galen, as we dive into the IF Collective. So beginning in January, we're going to have a mastermind and a coaching opportunity for those of you who are watching, or maybe someone you know, to be able to dive on into coaching as well as your goals for 8 straight weeks. And here's what it looks like. It's called the IF Collective, Your Intentional Future. And the website there is below, shiftyourmindset.com/mastermind. Let us know if you have any questions about that. Let us know if you want to dive on in, and we will be sure to assist. This has been a great show there, ladies. I truly appreciate your time as we sat here and talked about sex on live TV. Good stuff there. Any parting words, any parting notes as we get ready to wrap up?
Subscribe,
yes.
share, like, and comment. Share this podcast with your friends on your social media. And Chris, any last comments?
Thank you. I just want to say thank you. I loved spending the morning with you both. And same, if you haven't got your fill of podcasts from the 5 that Ann McNeil does, then join me on my podcast called Women Creating Wealth. And if you're a woman who wants to learn about real estate investing,
or if you're a man that would like to share it with the woman that you know and care for, you can also too. Yes,
love it.
Peter, we're going to wrap up with the video for the retreat, because I do love listening to it myself. Yes, I do, and I hope you do too. Thank you.
Thank you all. Take care.
All right. My why really is the fact that you really can think and grow rich with a spirit of excellence, in the spirit of service to God. I came from absolutely nothing. So there's no excuse about why I cannot help literally millions of people, but I have to start with one, and that one is myself.
Such a gift. The way that you have curated this space for people to be safe, to be seen, to be heard, to be validated, to be encouraged, to be lifted up in a way that allows them to see beyond what they may have ever even dreamt to be possible, is special. It's a blessing, it's a gift, and it's transformative.
Opening my eyes to what it is I need to do, how to do what I need to do, and sharing your life experiences so that I don't make the mistakes.
surround yourself with individuals that see something in you that you can't see. Because once they see that, then they will keep bugging you because they know better is in there. And that's what she has done for me. She saw my better when I couldn't even see it.